this computer. So hello everyone, and welcome to the third webinar in my How to Fall in Love series. So this webinar is called Change Your Dating Dynamic. So I have run 2 other webinars in this series. The first one was called Create Your Healthy and Loving Foundations, and the second was called Face Your Fears and Change Your Patterns. And those webinars are available on my YouTube channel, and if you're on my mailing list, you should also have them in your inbox. So I'm going to just tell you how this webinar is going to work, and I'm going to aim for an hour and 15 maximum. I'll be talking for about 40 minutes, leading you through the content, talking to you about how I changed my dating dynamic in order to form a healthy and loving relationship and find love, and how some of my clients have done exactly the same thing. So I'll be talking you through that. I'll then, towards the end, tell you a little bit about some of the opportunities to change your dating dynamic with my support. And there's an opportunity for a discovery call with me, a 30-minute discovery call. That's free. And then there'll be some questions and answers, so you can ask me any questions. And then I will have a time when I'll explain more about my programs that are coming up. And yeah, and I'll tell you what's coming up and how you can join. So you don't have to stay on for that bit if that's not for you, but do stay on if you're interested in what's happening. So I'm just going to share my screen, share my PowerPoint, and press play, and go to the beginning actually, and press play. So as you can see, if you could have a notebook and pen, a paper to hand, that would be great. And if you don't have that, maybe you could just go and get that. And yeah, so I've used this photo of me and my now husband in the Alps, which is where he proposed. And you know, I like using photos from real life rather than stock photos. And I use this photo because I changed my dating dynamic. And some of you will know some of my story already, but very briefly, I had many years of dysfunctional relationships, lots of singleness, lots of relationships that ended badly, lots of heartache for me. I hurt other people. I had some challenging times, some loneliness, and then I decided that I would make it my job to find out why I couldn't make a healthy relationship work for me. And I went on I did lots of self-exploration. I got lots of support through therapy and coaching. And I did lots of work on myself. I showed up for myself. I invested in myself, spent time and money on myself. And I changed my dating dynamic. And I fell in love, and I got married 6 months ago in June 2019. And I learned so much over the course of all that journey that you know, I've compiled so much information and knowledge and so forth that I have decided to share it all with you. So I built a coaching practice which is flourishing. I run retreats in Dorset and abroad, and I run workshops and coach one-to-one. And a lot of my work is summarized in my book, How to Fall in Love, that you can see behind me on the shelf. How to Fall in Love, a 10-step journey to the heart. And in this webinar, I'm going to talk you through some of the things I cover in that book, and some of the things I cover on my How to Fall in Love courses. I have a course starting this Monday, so you're welcome to join that. Yeah, if you don't have the book, I highly recommend it, because it's a really good way to start to explore your own dating dynamic. So let me just move. You know, I changed my dating dynamic, but You don't need to believe me. You can believe some of the women that I have worked with. And I hope some of these comments and quotes give you hope. So Kate said that with my guidance, I finally dared to fully embrace and love myself and to believe that I am worthy of being loved. Not long after that, I entered into a new relationship. Suddenly, love came naturally to me. So Kate is now living with her partner, who she has been with for quite a while. And so she came to me single, and she's now living with her partner. So I hope that gives you hope. Bryony, who did my course, both my courses, How to Fall in Love, Laying the Foundations, and Date with Courage, Clarity, and Confidence. So she is now in a relationship. By shifting the way we think and feel about ourselves, we can bring someone new into our lives and we can make life more fun. I wanted a partner so that I could go out and have fun with him. I wanted a new best friend. And that's a lovely thing to have. That's what she has now. She's in a new relationship. And Phoebe is getting married this summer. So I'm now starting to imagine a future for myself with a truly amazing, fun and secure person, which I had never thought possible or experienced. And Phoebe also took my How to Fall in Love course. So there is hope. Many of the women and men who come to work with me are struggling with issues around dating and relationships, and often with issues around self-love and self-care, and perhaps with issues around career and feeling inauthentic in their careers or not enjoying their careers. And by doing some of this work, we can change those things. We can change our lives. We can change our dating dynamics. And we can find love and a fulfilling life. So, you know, as I say, I've just run 2 other webinars, and those webinars deal with some of the foundational work. So I have, my book is 10 chapters, and I have divided my courses into 2 separate courses. And the first course is How to Fall in Love, Laying the Foundations. And the second course is Date with Courage, Clarity, and Confidence. So if you can imagine that the first course and the first half of the book is the inner work, the foundational work, the work that many of us need to do. Not all of us, some of us just fall in love and it works and we stay in a relationship forever. But many of us need to do some foundational self-discovery work on ourselves before we can go out there and date with courage, clarity, and confidence. So if you haven't seen those other webinars, I would encourage you to watch them. They are Healthy Foundations and Face Your Fears and Challenge Your Patterns. So just a few questions for you. Have you built your healthy foundations? Have you built your healthy foundations? Are you standing on solid ground? When you go dating, are you on solid ground? Do you feel strong and secure in yourself, or do you feel wobbly all over the place, sort of prone to being blown around by other people's opinions, very vulnerable to being rejected? Do you have healthy self-esteem? Do you believe in yourself? Do you believe in your self-worth? Do you believe in your value? And do you then date and enter into relationships accordingly? Have you understood your self-sabotaging patterns? So I talked about this on the Fears and Patterns webinar. Our fears often drive our patterns and we get into a mess. I got into lots of messes with my patterns. So some of the patterns we talked about on that webinar that I explore on my course and that we look at in the book are being drawn to unavailable people, people who won't commit to us, people who might let us down, who are emotionally unavailable, physically unavailable, being drawn to commitment phobes, avoiding relationship, so staying out of relationship. Perhaps because we're busy, we're too busy at work, but actually that's often an excuse because we are afraid. Have you started to change those patterns? So if you haven't, you might want to look at the chapters 3 and 4 in my book, come on my How to Fall in Love course, watch the other webinar, Fears and Patterns. So have you started to change those patterns? And we can start to change those patterns in all our relationships. So again, many of the people who come to work with me struggle with some of the issues that I struggled with over the years. So saying yes when we mean no, saying yes to others, which means we say no to ourselves, caring for others too much and not caring for ourselves, doing too much for other people and not looking after ourselves, not making time for self-care, self-love, being engaged in unhealthy behaviors like binge eating, overeating, drinking, unhealthy relationships. I have been through all that and I have healed from all of that. So have you started to change your patterns? Have you started to change your patterns? And have you let go of exes, broken dreams, and unhelpful core beliefs? We haven't covered that in this webinar series. I will come back to that again, but it's in my book, chapter 5, and it's step 5 of my How to Fall in Love course. It's also something we do on my retreats, and it's absolutely wonderful. We use the beach, we use the sea to do some really heartfelt letting go exercises. So that's the foundational work, and I would suggest that you you look into that. I'm just going to check chat. I suggest that you look into the foundational work before you, before you date, perhaps, because we need really strong foundations in order to date healthily. So make sure you do the foundational work. But this webinar is more outward looking. It's more about dating. So imagine that you've done all your foundational work and you are going to think about dating. So this is what we're going to cover, and it's probably quite a lot, so I'll do my best. How to date with a positive mindset. How to let go of unrealistic expectations without lowering our standards. How to create time and space for love. How to date with healthy and loving boundaries and not walls. And how to meet eligible dates offline as well as online. So that's what I'm going to attempt to cover. I'm just going to check the time. That's what I'm going to attempt to cover today. So let's start with mindset. How is your mindset? Do you feel positive or dispirited when it comes to the idea of a relationship, of dating? Do you feel positive or dispirited? Do you have hope or do you feel hopeless? And do you have a fixed or a growth mindset? So this is a term, fixed and growth mindset is a term from psychology, and there's lots written about that on the internet that you can look up. But if you can imagine that a fixed mindset, someone with a fixed mindset goes on a date, the date goes wrong, or they enter into a relationship and that person rejects them. And that they take that to be the truth, that they are unworthy, that they are unlovable, that all their dates are going to end like that, that all their relationships are going to end like that. And someone with a growth mindset would go on that date or see the end of that relationship as an opportunity to learn. They might suffer a little bit, they might feel some feelings, which it's very important to do that. But then they see and they think, gosh, I tried, I was courageous, I went out there, I learned, these are the things that I've learned. So are you entering into this with a fixed or a growth mindset? And this is really important to all of our lives. So if I had a fixed mindset, I probably wouldn't be here doing this webinar, because I'd be thinking, oh, not enough people watched my last one, or something went wrong, or I pressed the wrong button, or I forgot to record. I'm never doing it again. I'm never doing it again. Whereas I can use every experience as an opportunity to learn and to grow. So you might want to have a little think about where is your mindset today. If you'd like to type anything in the chat, that would be really great. You can type to me. Oops, I'll come back to that. You can type to me privately, or you can type to the entire group. So how is your mindset? You might just want to take a note on a piece of paper. How is my mindset? Do I feel positive? Do I feel hopeful? Because I can guarantee that if you don't feel positive and hopeful about dating, it will grind you down. You will not have the energy or the spirit to continue. And every blow and every block will every blow and every knock will completely floor you. So how is your mindset? So there's another question which is very important. How open is your heart? So I'm going to ask you, as I often do, if it is safe to do so, I'm going to ask you to close your eyes. How open is your heart? So if you can close your eyes and place your hand somewhere near your heart. I like to place my hand over my chest and over my heart. How open is my heart to love? How open am I to intimacy? How open am I to risking my heart? How open is your heart? So you might not get any immediate answers, but I'd like to encourage you to take this exercise away with you and to do it yourself. So find yourself a quiet place and maybe close your eyes. You might listen to some meditative music. And I'd like you to ask that question, how open is my heart? Because as I discussed in the Fears and Patterns webinar, when we're afraid of opening our heart, when we're afraid of letting somebody in, then that drives all manner of patterns. We're not actually open to real love. So we end up choosing people who can't give us real love. We end up subconsciously choosing unavailable men or women. We end up subconsciously choosing women or men who are not going to commit to us, who are addicted to alcohol, who live on the other side of the world, who are married to somebody else. So if we are afraid of getting hurt, we will deliberately choose people who can't enter into an intimate relationship with us. But that is such a frustrating cycle to end up in, and I have been in it. So, because we do end up hurt, it hurts much more than entering into a relationship with someone who is available. So of course there is a risk when we start opening our heart to love. Of course there is a risk. People change their minds, people get sick, but that's living, that is being alive. And you know, it doesn't have to be, if we don't want to be on our own, we don't have to be, but we might have to take some risks. You know, and that's why I called my second course Date with Courage, Clarity and Confidence, because we do have to take some risks. So how open is your heart? You might just want to jot that down on a piece of paper. You might want to save this exercise and come back to it after the webinar. You might want to type something in the chat. Please feel free to do so. So that first exercise around our mindset and how open our heart is, you know, that's part of the foundations. That's part of that initial inner journey. So let's now look at our list. If you have one, or the kind of guy or girl or woman or man that we fall for, do you have a list or a particular type? Is your list realistic, or is it made up of somebody who doesn't actually exist? Are you looking for a carbon copy of yourself? I'm going to talk about that in a moment. And do you need to replace your list with a broad brush vision? So, you know, I've written in my book, and I talk about it on the course, that there was a time when I had a very specific, quite long list. I don't think I had it all written down, but in my mind, this man who I was going to end up with needed to have all these attributes. So I wanted him to be bilingual or trilingual, because I'm bilingual, well, almost bilingual. I speak very fluent Spanish and Portuguese. I wanted him to have had a similar lifestyle to me. I've lived all over the world, Mexico, Brazil, and Australia. And I wanted him to have a similar level of education and profession. So I went to Oxford University. I was a Reuters journalist. I worked in Parliament. I used to fly around with the Prime Minister. So I wanted someone of that caliber. I wanted someone who fitted that mold. I also wanted this man to be a really good dancer. So I love to salsa dance, and but I don't know if you've discovered that you know, British men aren't the best salsa dancers, and I did date men of lots of nationalities, but I could never quite find that correct fit. So somebody who was great at dancing, but was also quite manly and strong, and all these other cliches, I suppose. I could never find that in one person. And what I understood was that my list was unrealistic. So I dated some of those people. I dated people who had the same profession as me, people I met in Parliament or through Reuters, but those relationships didn't work out. And my list wasn't realistic. I had all these tick boxes and nobody was going to tick them. And in fact, I was looking for a carbon copy of myself. So I wanted somebody like me, somebody equally emotionally, you know, I can be very sociable. I'm quite talkative. I can be the life and soul of the party. I used to be much more when I was younger. So I was looking for someone like me, similar career, similar education, similar background. I was looking for a carbon copy of myself. But two of me in a relationship would be a nightmare. So I don't want two of me in a relationship. And as it turns out, my husband isn't like me at all in terms of sort of his emotions. He's the opposite. So I can be very up and down emotionally. I feel lots of highs, but I also really feel the lows. He's more stable, so he hums along somewhere in the middle. And that makes a really good balance, because I'm not quite so extreme, and I also lift him up a little bit. So it makes a really good balance. He doesn't have the same education or career history as me. And in the early days, I really judged him for those things. I didn't think he was good enough. And I'm sad about that now, because I really see the amazing qualities that he has. You know, kindness, generosity, compassion, stability, all those things. And, you know, I confess that they weren't on my list earlier. Kindness was nowhere on my list. I kept looking for edgy guys. These guys would always let me down. They wouldn't be good for me. Whereas this person who I'm now married to, you know, he was stable and kind and all those things. And I thought that was dull initially. I thought that was boring. But eventually I saw the light, and I found that that was really good for me. So do you need to replace your list with a broad brush vision? And do you need to think about the values that you want in your partner, that you'd like to have in your partner? So values like kindness, generosity, thoughtfulness, consideration. I'd say my partner and I share a value of freedom. We both love being outdoors. We don't really like being boxed in. So freedom, that was one of our values. So perhaps you need to look at a broad brush vision. So if you'd like more information on this, and if you'd like to work through this list, then have a look in my book. There's a whole chapter on this. And also, if you'd like to join one of my courses, we go through this on the course. So I'm going to move on. just check the time, and do let me know if you have any questions or responses. You can type them in the chat. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to cover is making time for love. So many women and men who come to work with me are professional. Often they've had really good, big careers, very successful, very accomplished, ambitious, and they don't have time for love. They don't have time for love. In other words, they don't make time for love. I didn't make time for love either. I didn't prioritize it. I would prioritize getting a job, doing my CV, doing interview preparation. I would prioritize my exercise, which for me was compulsive exercise because I was desperate to lose the weight I had gained through binge eating in the past. I prioritized everything, but I didn't prioritize love. And I suppose I realized that expecting love to just fall out of the sky and land on my lap, expecting to bump into Mr. Right at a supermarket or to sit next to him on a plane, it wasn't going to work for me. Maybe it works for some people and that's amazing, but it didn't work for me. So I had to make time for love. And I really like this expression, how you spend your time is how you spend your life. So how are you spending your time? And be aware that that is how you are spending your life. That is how you are spending your life. So that's quite sobering to me sometimes when I notice, for example, that I'm not writing, when I have a huge ambition to write, to finish a book that I'm writing and to write more. How am I spending my time? Am I scrolling through Facebook? Am I watching terrible TV? How am I spending my time? Because that is how I'm spending my life. Remember, you have a choice. Now, I know it's hard to realize that we have a choice. It's very easy to think, I don't have a choice as to how I spend my time. And I could argue that some of us have more of a choice than others. So I don't have young children. I don't have, my mum is very unwell, but she lives 300 miles away. So it's not a daily thing that I need to care for. I need to make time to visit, but it's not a daily thing, daily responsibility. So some of us might have more time than others, but we all have a choice. And I think for years I felt a bit of a victim to my own life and to my own behaviors. I don't have time. But it was how I chose to spend my time that was important. It's also about how I chose to spend my money. So, ever since I left my full-time journalism career in Parliament, the following year, I think I earned a fifth of what I used to earn. But I maintained my investment in myself. I maintained my therapy. I maintained my coaching. I maintained my personal development because it was absolutely a priority for me. So we also have a choice as to how we invest our money and our resources and our energy. We do have a choice. So you could take baby steps and tweak how you spend your time. So I'm not suggesting a radical overhaul, but I am suggesting that you take out your diary and you allocate some time for romance, relationships. And for you, this might start with self-love, with self-care, and with building your foundations. You might need to allocate time for that. So it might not be allocating time to go on a date. For some of you, it will be. But for some of you, it will be allocating time to do the self-care. Perhaps to read my book again, or for the first time, to do the work, to do the exercises, because of course everyone just reads it and doesn't do the exercises, which is what I do with books like that. But going back and doing the exercises, or having a look at my course, joining my course, a retreat, or somebody else. There might be another coach, there might be some other personal development that you want to do. If you are ready for dating, then how much time would you like to spend on that? And the dates aren't just going to materialize. We have to maybe get our photograph taken for a dating website so we look good. Maybe we have to commit to sending 3 messages a week and to replying to those messages. We might also need to schedule time for, well, we do need to schedule time for the things that we love doing. And I'll talk about this in a moment. But that is a key factor in our dating love journey. So are you making time for love? So you might want to take your pen and paper and just jot down whether you are making time for love. And how would you like to change how you're running your schedule? I'm going to ask this question again towards the end, but there might be some little steps that come to you right now that you'd like to write down. Again, if there's anything you'd like to share, please do so in the chat. Okay. So I'm going to move on. Whistle stop tour of, this content in my courses. We go really deep into this. This is a whistle stop tour through this information. So something really important in order to change our dating dynamic is to set healthy and loving boundaries. So we set healthy boundaries with ourselves, and that's all about self-care, self-love, making time for fun, making time for exercise. And we set healthy boundaries when we go dating with other people. So there's lots of areas in which we can set boundaries. Now, I'm really passionate about this topic of boundaries because I didn't have any in the past. I didn't have any boundaries. I had porous boundaries that everything could slip through. So, for example, at work, I would just work. I would say yes to everything. I would never say no. When I was about to leave, maybe to exercise or to go on a date, and somebody would give me more work to do, I'd just do it. So I didn't have a boundary. And if you can think of a boundary as sort of a line between you and the external world, or between you and another person. So I love that scene in Dirty Dancing. This is my dance space. This is your dance space. So if you can imagine you have a dance space here, you get to decide who you let into that space and how close they come. You get to decide how often they come into your space. You get to decide what you accept into your space. So I've put a few areas here. Electronic communication. So I get lots of feedback from women who are dating about all these WhatsApp messages and texts that completely, what do you write in them? What do you say? How often do you check it? How do you manage those feelings when nobody's replying to you, when you feel rejected, when there's silence at the other end? Well, I would suggest boundaries around electronic communication. And we need this in all areas of our lives. I definitely need this as someone who's running a business that is largely online. So how often do I check my phone? How often do I check my email? And do I notice how that distracts me from what I'm actually doing? So I always suggest in dating that you move the conversation to real life as soon as possible. So, it's difficult when people are living far away, and that could be a red flag if you're always dating people who live a long way away from you. But always move that conversation to a phone conversation or to face-to-face as soon as possible. So you might want a boundary around time spent on dates. I'm just going to have a little drink of water. When I drink on film, I always dribble. So you might want a boundary around time spent on dates. So so once you've moved somebody to the face-to-face stage, like go for a coffee or an early evening hour and a half chat. So I advise, committing ourselves to a small amount of time first, rather than a long dinner, drinks that can get out of hand. So if we struggle with our own boundaries with ourselves. So in the past, I would go on a date with someone, I'd like them, we'd drink and I'd get a bit drunk, and then we'd have dinner and I'd share too much about myself and my life. I'd completely, share all my backstory and ask about theirs, and we get really deep and really intense based on nothing. And then I'd stay out too late. I might end up kissing that person. You know, in the old days, I might end up going home with that person, and then I wake up in a relationship. Hang on a minute, I've only just met this person. I don't know who they are. I don't know if I really like them. I've just gone too fast. Perhaps because I'm craving love and affection, which is something that I talked about on the Healthy Foundations webinar, and that is in my first course, Healthy Foundations. Boundaries around booze, around alcohol. So, you know, I learned to date sober. I barely drink anymore. Alcohol really doesn't agree with me. But in the past, I used to drink a lot. And alcohol, although it's a sort of, it smooths things over on dates, and it gives us a bit of a confidence boost. For me, I would drink, and it's like the red mist descends, and all my powers of discernment go out the window. I no longer have any gauge as to whether I actually want to be with this person. I'm just, everything, hormones take over, and I end up physical with somebody, and I go too far. And, you know, that usually ended up in a mess. I didn't take care of myself. I didn't proceed with caution. I didn't evaluate whether this person was right for me. I just let myself go. And, you know, sex is another boundary. Like, you might want to decide when you cross that physical boundary. So when are you going to move on to that physical, intimate relationship? And notice what happens to you when you do. So again, for me, physical contact, that red mist would descend. I can't see anything anymore. I've lost my powers of discernment. I'm just going to go out with you. I'm going to wake up with you. And then a couple of weeks in, I think, gosh, how did that happen? How did I end up in this relationship with this person? And I, you know, it's sad. We end up hurting ourselves, and we end up hurting other people. I mentioned about how much we share of ourselves on dates, so you might want a boundary around that. How much information you give about your life on the first date, and be aware that when we overshare, we create this false intimacy. And we do that because we're hungry. We're hungry for intimacy, connection, love. And so we overshare, and we create this really intense bond, but that's not based on reality. That's gone too fast. It's not based on reality. So be aware of how much you might want to share of yourself on a date, which is why it's good to keep them short. And about your thinking, so I know I'm not alone with this. So in the past, when I was dating, you know, I'd meet somebody, we'd go on a date, and instantly my mind would run off into some fantasy future where I am married with a couple of kids, and you know, where we're sitting on a beach somewhere, and I would imagine my future with this person before I even knew his second name, before I knew anything about him. And again, your fantasy, you know, when somebody doesn't reply immediately to a message, keep the reins on your thinking. You know, this is why it's helpful to be supported when we go through this process. It's helpful to have people to check this out with. And, you know, as well as my courses, I have my Love Ladies community for women who are dating. And you can check out all these questions. Have I shared too much? Am I overthinking? Am I fantasizing? I'll tell you a bit about that at the end. So these are your boundaries. There's a whole chapter on this in my book, and a whole section on this in my course. So have a think about your boundaries. How you can set healthy and loving boundaries for yourself. Right, I'm going to move on. So I mentioned in the sort of introduction that we're going to talk about how to meet people offline as well as on, because I get loads of complaints from the men and women I coach that they don't know where to meet people anymore. You know, in the old days, you'd go to a dance. When we were younger, we might go out drinking to a bar, but now, where do we meet people? So the first question is, are you in the right pool? Are you in the right dating pool? So when I worked in Parliament as a journalist, news journalist, high adrenaline, I was surrounded by similarly high adrenaline people. War photographers, political journalists after scoops. I was going to war zones and conflicts and tsunamis and terrorist attacks. I met people like me, high adrenaline people, people who didn't want to commit. And I thought I wanted to be with that kind of person. I always thought I wanted to be with a war photographer. But actually, as I got in touch with myself and who I am at my core and my authentic self, and as I understood what it meant to me to live an authentic life, everything changed. Not only did I break down in that career, because suddenly the disconnect between my true self and the job I was doing was so vast that I felt utterly depressed. I was also totally worn out from overwork and from imposter syndrome and working too hard to compensate for that. So I understood that I was in the wrong job and that I was living an inauthentic life. Burnout, breakdown, slowly rebuild myself based on different foundations, healthy foundations, a connection with myself. So rebuilding myself as a different person. And then I was in a different dating pool. I was no longer in that world of high adrenaline news journalism. I was moving into the world of well-being and into a softer world. And I was also reconnecting with the things I absolutely love doing. So I was starting to reconnect with the part of me that absolutely loves the great outdoors. So I love cycling, I love swimming in the sea, I love being in the countryside. I was living in London in a tiny flat. And I started to realize that as much as I loved London, I wanted to spend more time in the great outdoors. As I reconnected to that, I met different people. So I went on some hiking group weekends and day trips with a hiking group that I signed up to. Lots of random people, but people who love the great outdoors. I started to say yes to invites to spend time doing outdoorsy, sporty things. And through those yeses, I met my now husband. So are you living an authentic life? Are you someone that you would like to date? So if you look at your life, you know, are you someone that you would like to date? If I look at my life now, am I someone that I would like to date or to marry? In many ways, yes, because I am living my passion. I am working at my dream. I am working with love and being of service. I am writing, not as often as I would like, but I am writing my book, my next book. I have written a book, so I'm fulfilling that passion. I go swimming in the sea. I run on the beach. I go mountain biking. So in many ways, yes, I am someone I would like to date. In other ways, no, because I continue to prioritize my work. I still overwork. I can be a bit manic, and I need to keep remembering that connection with myself. But actually, yes, because I have learned to prioritize my relationship with myself. And although sometimes I go off kilter, sometimes I fall into criticism, into judgment of my husband. Sometimes I go into overwork and I don't make enough time for us. I have learned so much and I have changed so much that I can spot myself. I can see when I'm going wrong and I can change my behavior, and I change it really quickly before it sabotages my relationships. So yes, I am someone that I would like to date. So are you doing what you love? Are you stepping out of your comfort zone? So as I reconnected with my true self, I had to, you know, as I wanted to go outdoors and do these outdoorsy trips, I had to take some risks and step out of my comfort zone, join some groups. I went on a weekend away to the Isle of Wight with a bunch of complete strangers. We all drove together from London. I'd never met them before. I slept in a dorm, in a bunkhouse. I've always said I'm a terrible sleeper, so I was very nervous about that. But I slept really well. So we have to step out of our comfort zones. So, and this was the result of me taking all those steps. So by reconnecting to my true self, by doing the things that I love, by being outdoors. As you can see, we had an outdoors wedding, beautiful day. So by doing all those things, that is how I found love. So I stopped dating in the wrong pool. I became somebody I wanted to spend time with. I became someone who was living a fulfilled life and who was following her passions and her dreams. So that was the result, my wedding last June. So your next steps, and remember, these are baby steps. So I'd just like you to go away from this webinar with 3 steps. You might have some more, but I'd like you to start with 3 steps that you'd like to take in order to change your dating dynamic. So that might be to schedule some time in your diary to explore this area of love. And that could be by booking a 30-minute discovery call with me, and I'll tell you how to do that in a bit. You might want to watch the webinars that I've already recorded. You might want to reread my book, join my course, or you might want to work with somebody else. You might want to get a photograph taken for an online profile. You might want to send some messages. You might want to sign up to a dance class, hiking group, choir, drawing, painting, cycling group, whatever floats your boat, whatever you feel passionate about, whatever you long to do. So what 3 steps can you take to change your dating dynamic? You might want to set boundaries. You might want to think about a broad brush vision of your ideal partner. You might want to make time for love. You might want to become someone who you want to date. So you can share some of that with me when I go, when I take this off screen share. You can put some things in the chat. And this is a slide that I've used on my previous 2 webinars. I just really like it, so I'm going to come back to it. The 3 A's: awareness of your fears, of your patterns, of your mindset, of the way perhaps that you avoid dating and relationships, perhaps that you deflect the idea of romance with busy work or compulsive exercise. So self-awareness. And that's what I am all about. That's what these webinars are about, and my courses and my book, self-awareness. Without that, I wouldn't be in a relationship. Acceptance of yourself. So loving yourself, accepting yourself as you are, accepting your journey to date, accepting your struggles, forgiving yourself, and accepting that you might need to make some mistakes. So you might need to move out of your comfort zone, and you might need to make some mistakes. You might need to learn from doing. So I've said this before, you know, I used to think that if I just got myself absolutely 100% sorted and perfect, then I could then go and date. But that's an unrealistic expectation. So as I sit alone in my room, making myself perfect, I'm not practicing, I'm not learning, and we learn by doing. But there is timing here. So I don't advocate going out, learning and making mistakes until we have some healthy foundations. And, you know, my course, it's only 5 weeks, and it will really help you to make some healthy foundations. My book will help with that also. So I do believe that we learn by doing and that we need to make mistakes. But yeah, get your foundations in place first. And accountability, support. Again, I don't think we can do this alone. I haven't done any of my personal growth work alone. Some of it, I suppose, you know, journaling and meditating, but I need the input of other people who are on this journey or who know more than me about this journey. So accountability. So how are you going to find support for your journey? On my courses, I suggest that you find a dating buddy. If you are dating, so someone you can buddy up with, you can say to them that I'm going on a date. I'm going to stay for an hour and a half. I'm going to be home by 9 o'clock. I'm only going to share this much. And you can call them in advance and you can call them on the way home. And my Love Ladies community group is also useful for that. So how are you going to find support? You might want to book a call with me or find out about somebody else who can support you. So how are you going to find support? Don't go it alone. So as I say, you know, doing things together is so important. And this photo is from my amazing retreat, the Love Retreat in Turkey. We're going again in October 2020. Sisterhood and laughter and incredible personal development and yoga. And we're better together, we're stronger together. So we learn from each other. And I have this photo was taken from my Dorset retreat, which happens at the end of February. And actually, if you're interested in that, the early bird ends at the end of tomorrow, Friday, January the 17th. So that will save you £50. So have a look at that. So here's some ways in which I would love to support you. And I'm going to be talking about this in a moment. First of all, we'll have questions. And then if you'd like to stay on, I'll talk you through some of these courses and also how to book a call with me. So my How to Fall in Love small group course starts on Monday for women, a small group of women. And it does have a one-to-one call with me and 6 group coaching calls. If you can't make the calls, still do get in touch, because there's an opportunity to do the course without the calls, perhaps for a lower fee, or to have an extra call with me. There's my Dorset retreat, and Turkey retreat is in October, and I offer one-to-one coaching. And just to say that, you know, I do believe in what I do. I do believe in what I offer. And Rachel has said that by working with me, she got to the bottom of stuff that she has never been able to understand before. So, you know, when I work with my clients, I believe that, you know, I believe through my struggles and through my journey and through all the personal development work I have done, and through studying counseling and psychotherapy and having therapy, and recovering and healing from eating disorders and dysfunctional relationship patterns and all those things. I believe that when I work with people, you know, I can see very quickly their patterns, their struggles, their blocks, and I can see how we can overcome them. So, you know, I'd love to invite you to get in touch. And that's a lovely quote about my course, that it's exceptional. So you can book a free discovery call with me, and I'm going to put these links into the chat box. This week, not much left of this week, but there are some calls on Friday, and then all next week I have some calls available. So I think that's my final. Yeah, so I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to see if you have any questions. Bear in mind that this is still being recorded. Once I've talked you through, if you want to stay on and hear more about my courses and programs, I'll stop the recording. But if you'd like to put any questions in the chat now, you can write them privately to me, or you can write them, why is that so big? Yeah, you can write them privately to me, or you can write them to everyone. And I won't, if you have any questions, I won't use your name when I say them out loud. They'll be helpful for other people. If you'd like to share any of the steps that you're going to take, please do that. Please put that in the chat as well. And if you would like to, you know, make any comments about the webinar, if there's any points that stood out to you, please do so. And what I am going to do, while you're thinking about that, I'm just going to mention some of the things that I have on offer. Tell you a little bit more about them. So I will, if you write anything in the chat, I'll come back to it. But let me just show you by sharing again. Oops. Yep. Okay. So this is my how to book a call with me. Click on, I'll put this link in the chat in a moment, click on Discovery Call, and it's free, and you'll see how to do that. My book, How to Fall in Love, a 10-step journey to the heart. I hope I'm on the right, I'm just going to close that down because this went wrong last time. So I hope you can see this screen. I hope you can see my book, How to Fall in Love, a 10-step journey to the heart, is on Amazon. This is my group course that starts on Monday. It's a really fantastic course. If you can't make the group calls or one-to-one, as I say, please get in touch, because there are ways to manage this so that it really works for you. So have a look at that. It's a small group of women, and I'd invite you to book a discovery call with me. If there aren't any slots that you can do, just drop me an email and we'll try and arrange something. If you're interested in the course and want to talk to me before Monday, please just drop me an email. But this is a fantastic course, and videos and worksheets, accountability, support, awareness, all those things that I've talked about. So this is the foundational work. I also have a second course, which is Date with Courage, Clarity and Confidence. That's more about this outer work that we've been talking about on this webinar. It's due to start on March the 2nd. So this one starts January the 2nd. So that's, January the 20th. So that's Monday. Again, there's an option to do the course without the one-to-one with me for a lower fee. So there are ways. If you're struggling with the price, please get in touch. And then I'd like to just show you, let me have a look. Get that out of the way. My love retreat. So that is February the 28th. I have 4 places left, and the early bird is until the end of Friday the 17th. So that's tomorrow if you're watching this on Thursday. So please drop me an email in order to book that. I'll send out an email to everyone with all these links, and I'll put them in the chat in a moment. And then this is Turkey, just to show you how wonderful it all was. And we're going again in October 2020. Limited places, so I'd love you to come on that. You can see I smile much more than usual. I smile whenever I look at all these pictures because we had so much fun, as well as lots of growth and healing. And this is my Love Ladies community, a small monthly fee, currently on offer at £20 a month to join this wonderful, loving, supportive accountability group if you are interested in self-love and finding a relationship. So if I stop sharing my screen and I start putting some of these links for you in the chat. Yeah, so, and if you have any questions, please ask them while I'm grappling with technology. Don't you love it? So let me look here. No, not there, here. So this is my course, which you're very welcome to have a look at. So I'm going to type that in the chat. This is how to book one of my discovery calls. So I'm going to put that here as well. And I'm also going to put my Turkey Love Retreat in the chat. And do type any questions. I've had some questions about mixed events, or, you know, because a lot of the work I've been doing so far has been for women. I'm increasingly having inquiries from men, so I will be running some mixed workshops and events. So keep an eye out for that. And if you're not on my mailing list, you might want to be. So you can go to catherinebaldwin.com or to howtofallinlove.co.uk. And I'm just going to type my email if anyone just wants to click on that to get in touch. That's Catherine@catherinebaldwin.com. So do you have any questions? I'm amazed that I've managed to stick to time today. My other webinars have gone on a little bit. So are there any more questions? I'd love to hear from you. And what I'm going to do actually is I am going to close the recording now, and you are welcome to ask any questions through the chat or out loud. So thank you everyone for being here, and I'm just gonna say goodbye, and please take a look at my YouTube channel or my website for the other webinars and for details of courses and retreats. Bye.